John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured all to save. But though he sleeps, his life was lost while struggling for the slave. His soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory,
Welcome
glory,
to War of the Rebellion, Stories of the Civil War. I'm your host, Leon, and this is a reading of the regimental history. Under the Maltese Cross, Antietam to Appomattox, the Loyal Uprising in western Pennsylvania, 1861 to 1865, Campaigns 155th Pennsylvania Regiment, narrated by the rank and file. Minute on death of Brevet-Major Samuel Kilgore, May 13, 1907. The surviving members of the 155th Regiment Pennsylvania Volunteers, having learned, with feelings of unfeigned sorrow, of the death of our late comrade, Brevet-Major Samuel Kilgore, who answered the last roll call on Sunday, May 12, 1907, at the residence of his daughter in this city, we desire to place on our record our high estimate of his worth as a patriot who loved his country and risked his life in her defense. Major Kilgore entered the service in the Civil War as First Lieutenant of Company D, 155th Regiment Pennsylvania Volunteers, August 22, 1862, and was promoted to Captain of the Company, December 15, 1862, and Brevet Major for gallant action on the field at the Battle of Peebles Farm, Virginia, September 30th, 1864, where he was severely wounded, by which reason he was forced to accept his honorable discharge on March 10, 1865. Throughout his entire career in the Union Army, he was recognized as a dashing and fearless soldier, and an officer of an exceptional ability. From the first, he showed an aptitude for military command. He was noted as a most proficient drill master, and under his skillful training, his company became one of the best in the regiment. Among the many battles in which he participated were Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Wilderness, Spotsylvania, North Anna, Potomac, Bethesda Church, Cold Harbor, and Petersburg. On his return from the war, his interest in military affairs still continued, and for several years he was colonel of the 14th Regiment of the National Guard of Pennsylvania. His career in civil life became almost as notable as his service in the army. His genial disposition and popular manners at once won public favor, and he held many offices of importance and responsibility. He was superintendent of the city markets of Pittsburgh. He held the office of treasurer of Allegheny County for 2 terms, that of the city treasurer of Pittsburgh for 1 term. At the time of his death, he still filled a position of responsibility in the Department of Public Safety of Pittsburgh. He ended his career as a soldier and citizen, leaving a record alike honorable and distinguished. Private James P. O'Neill, Company E, 155th Pennsylvania Volunteers. Comrade James P. O'Neill, the well-known city journalist and newspaper correspondent, was born in Philadelphia, February 22, 1844, and died February 5, 1901. He was educated at the Cathedral Parochial Schools and at St. Michael's Seminary, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He had been selected, because of his precocious talents, by the late Bishop O'Connor to complete his education at the American College at Rome. But he, like thousands of others with Irish blood in their veins, when the Civil War broke out, sprang to arms in defense of the flag, whose folds had given their fathers a shelter from British oppression. He enlisted, when but a mere lad of 17 years, in the 155th Pennsylvania Volunteers, and was successfully engaged at Antietam, September 17th, and at Fredericksburg, December 13th, 1862, and at Chancellorsville, May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. He also participated in the forced marches through Virginia and Maryland, and at the storming of Little Round Top on July 2nd, 1863, ending in the glorious victory at Gettysburg. He also took part in the Mine Run expedition, and during the winter of 1863 and 1864, was engaged with his regiment and guarding the railroad between Centerville and Falmouth, Virginia, which at that time was the main artery between Washington and Richmond. At the 3 days' fight in the Wilderness, 1864, he was wounded in the groin and incapacitated from further service in the field. He was transferred to the Veteran Reserve Corps, from which he was discharged June 29, 1865. At the close of the war, afterwards returning to Pittsburgh, he became later a medical student at the Kentucky State College, located at Louisville. Comrade O'Neill's experience through civil life became a varied one. First, he became a teacher in the Cathedral High School in Pittsburgh, and the following year, a brakeman on the Pennsylvania Railroad. Next, he became a telegraph editor and proofreader on the Pittsburgh Post, and afterwards, a reporter on most of the other Pittsburgh dailies, in the latter capacity gaining a name for himself and enduring fame, which still clings to his memory. He was married in Pittsburgh in 1870, and in 1893, after 23 years of married life, became a widower. Comrade O'Neill was the father of 3 children, 2 of whom survived to mourn the loss of a loving father and friend. His sons, James T. and Charles F. O'Neill, residing in Pittsburgh. Comrade O'Neill was a member of Post 3 GAR, Grand Army of the Republic, and also of the UVL of Pittsburgh, and both of these organizations took appropriate action on his death. He was a member of the Regimental Association of the 155th Pennsylvania Volunteers, being the first secretary of the association at its organization in 1876. His illness was of short duration. He was buried, with regimental escort, in St. Mary's Cemetery in Pittsburgh. Peace to his ashes. Colonel Peter H. Allabach, 131st Pennsylvania Volunteers. Colonel Peter Hollingshead Allabach was born in Wilkes-Barre, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, September 9, 1824. He was educated in the Wilkes-Barre Academy. On the 25th of November, 1844, he enlisted for 5 years' service in the regular army, and was assigned for duty in Company E, 3rd United States Infantry. His regiment was ordered to Mexico, and he participated in every battle during the war with Mexico, with but one exception, Buena Vista. For bravery and meritorious conduct, he was promoted to sergeant after his first 6 months of service. He was honorably discharged November 25, 1849. On the 6th of May, 1852, he was commissioned by Governor Bigler of Pennsylvania, Brigadier-General of the Uniformed Militia of Luzerne County. August 16, 1862, he was commissioned by Governor Curtin of Pennsylvania, Colonel of the 131st Regiment of Pennsylvania Volunteers. On his reporting with this regiment to General A. A. Humphreys, he was assigned to the command of the 2nd Brigade, 3rd Division, 5th Corps, Army of the Potomac. He led his brigade consisting of the 131st, 133rd, 123rd, and 155th Regiments in the memorable charge on Marye's Heights, at the Battle of Fredericksburg, and his tact and bravery on this occasion won the personal commendation of General Humphreys on the battlefield. He was especially mentioned in the official report of his commanding general. In the month of April, 1876, he was selected by Governor Hartranft and appointed captain of Company E, Centennial Guards, which position he held during the progress of the International Exposition in Philadelphia. In July 1878, he was appointed captain of the United States Capitol Police, which position he filled up to the time of his death, February 11, 1892. He was a man of commanding presence and soldierly bearing, a strict disciplinarian, a loyal patriot to his flag and country, one whose record is without blemish. He left a legacy more priceless than gold, that of an honest name and a brave soldier. Colonel Patrick H. O'Rourke. By Captain Porter Farley, 140th New York Volunteers, Rochester, New York. Colonel Patrick H. O'Rourke was born in Ireland, March 25, 1837, and was brought to America by his parents before he was a year old. The family lived for about a year in Montreal, then removed to Rochester, New York, which remained the home of Colonel O'Rourke's parents as long as they lived. He attended No. 9 public school, and upon his graduation from that school, when 15 years of age, on a competitive examination for a free scholarship, which the University of Rochester gives graduates of the public schools, O'Rourke passed highest in the examination, but he did not accept the scholarship. Upon leaving school, O'Rourke entered upon an apprenticeship to learn the trade of marble cutter. He continued in that occupation until the spring of 1857, when he received an appointment as cadet in the military academy at West Point. He there took a high stand from the very beginning, and maintained it throughout the course, graduating No. 1 with the highest honors, and was by virtue of that rank commissioned in the Corps of Topographical Engineers. Owing to the breaking out of the Civil War, his class was graduated 1 year sooner than it would have otherwise have been, and its members were all at once ordered to active duty. O'Rourke served for some time as drill master for new regiments, which were constantly arriving in Washington. He also served on staff duty, and was present in that capacity at the skirmish at Blackburn's Ford, which occurred on the day before the Battle of Bull Run. In July 1862, he came home to Rochester on a short leave of absence, and at that time was married to Miss Clara Bishop, whom he had known from childhood. Upon the organization at Rochester of the 140th Regiment New York Volunteers, in September 1862, he was commissioned as its colonel. He remained with and in command of the regiment until the day of his death, with the exception of a short time which included the Battle of Chancellorsville, when he was command of the brigade of which his regiment formed a part. He fell among his men in the fighting which took place on the rocky eastern slope of Little Round Top, at Gettysburg, on the afternoon of July 2nd, 1863. He was shot through the neck, and fell limp and lifeless without uttering a sound. It may be hoped he died without a pain. Very soon after his death, his widow entered the religious order of the Ladies of the Sacred Heart. She spent many years in their house in Detroit, and was then sent to the house in Providence, Rhode Island, where she was made Mother Superior, and where she died and was buried a few years ago. Colonel O'Rourke's body has been buried with the body of Colonel George Ryan of the same regiment, killed at Spotsylvania. They are side by side in the O'Rourke family lot and the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery near Rochester. Colonel O'Rourke commanded the 3rd Brigade of Ayer's Division from May 1863 until near the close of the forced marches to Gettysburg, when he was relieved by General Weed. The brigade consisted of the 140th New York, Colonel O'Rourke, the 146th New York, Colonel Kenner Garrard, 155th Pennsylvania, Colonel E. J. Allen, and the 91st Pennsylvania, Colonel E. M. Gregory. Both General Weed and Colonel O'Rourke were picked off by sharpshooters and killed in the storming and capture of Little Round Top by Weed's brigade on July 2nd, 1863. Frederic Winthrop, Brevet-Major-General, United States Volunteers, killed April 1st, 1865. By Brevet-Major George M. Laughlin. Few records of patriots who fell in the Civil War present a more brilliant military career than that of Brevet-Major-General Frederic Winthrop, who, at the head of his brigade of the United States Regulars in General Griffin's division of the 5th Army Corps, gave up his life for his country at Five Forks, the last battle of the war. He was a brother of Theodore Winthrop, a Harvard student who fell in the battle at Big Bethel, almost the first battle of the war. From Gettysburg to Five Forks, General Winthrop was closely connected with the 155th Regiment Pennsylvania Volunteers as officer of staff of General Ayres, and on many skirmish lines, and to perpetuate the deeds of so brave a soldier, this memoir is incorporated in this history. Frederic Winthrop, 4th son of Thomas Charles Winthrop, and Georgina Maria Kane, his wife, and 7th in descent from John Winthrop, 1st Governor of Massachusetts, was born in New York on the 3rd day of August 1839. At the age of 16, he entered the banking house of Denniston, Wood & Co., New York, as a clerk, where he remained till the breaking out of the rebellion. On the evening of Friday, the 19th of April, 1861, he was a guest at a party at the house of W. H. Aspinwall, a squire, given in honor of Major Robert Anderson, late commander at Fort Sumter. The 7th Regiment, New York State Militia, had that afternoon left the city for Washington, in compliance with President Lincoln's call for volunteers. This regiment was the only one in New York whose ranks were full, and in a situation for immediate service. The departure of the 7th was the general topic of conversation, and as troops were urgently needed, Winthrop and some of the young men present, who did not belong to any military organization, determined at once to offer their services to the country, and that same evening, before returning to their homes, they entered their names on the muster roll of Company E of the 71st Regiment, New York State Militia. On Sunday, April 21st, 1861, the 71st left New York for Washington, with Winthrop, a private in the ranks of Company F. At the Battle of Bull Run, which was fought July 21st, 1861, when the regiment was complimented for its behavior, Winthrop was honorably mentioned for his distinguished bravery and gallantry on the field on that day. October 26, 1861, he became captain of the 12th Regiment of Infantry, Regulars, United States Army, then stationed at Fort Hamilton, New York Harbor. It joined the Army of the Potomac April 11, 1862. From that time to the day of his death, he was on duty with that army, participating in all its famous battles. In the early summer of 1863, his health was broken down by typhoid fever, caused by exposure in the swamps of the Chickahominy, and he was ordered home by the surgeon. At 4 o'clock of the afternoon before the Battle of Gettysburg, he learned that an engagement was about to take place. He immediately arose from his sick bed, and ignoring the protests of his physician, he took the 6 o'clock train that afternoon for the battlefield, arriving in time to take part in the battle the following day. He was later specially detailed for duty on the staff of Brigadier-General R.B. Ayres, commanding the 2nd Division, 5th Corps. For his distinguished services and gallantry at the Battle of the Wilderness, he was promoted to the colonelcy of the 5th Regiment, New York Veteran Volunteers. This regiment was popularly known as Duryee's Zouaves. Its second colonel was Governor K. Warren. It was incorporated in the Brigade of United States Regulars. On the 10th of November, 1864, Colonel Winthrop was appointed Brevet Brigadier-General of Volunteers. He was assigned as commander of the 1st Brigade, 2nd Division, 5th Corps. The Battle of Five Forks was fought Saturday, April 1st, 1865. General Winthrop, while leading a charge at the head of his troops, was shot through the left lung and died 2 hours afterwards. Before he died, his whole thoughts were with his comrades and of the honor of his command. When told that the attack had been completely successful at every point, he said, quote, "Thank God, I am now willing to die." Unquote. Shortly before he died, his mind wandered, and he imagined himself still at the head of his command, and in the thick of the fight. He shouted, quote, "Captain Warren, how is that line? Has the attack succeeded?" Unquote. Gradually, he grew weaker, and his comrades who had gathered round thought him almost gone, when suddenly he started from the stretcher upon which he was lying, staggered forward, and crying out, said, quote, "Straighten the line," unquote. He fell back dead. General Griffin, when he heard of General Winthrop's death, exclaimed, "This victory is not worth Winthrop's life." General Ayres, commander of the division, issued the full general order to the troops announcing General Winthrop's death. Their remains were brought to New York and interred temporarily in the DePiester family vault in Trinity Churchyard on the 12th of April, 1865. During the day of the funeral, the flags on all the public buildings and hotels, etc., throughout the city were displayed at half-mast in his honor. The funeral escort consisted of the 12th, 22nd, and 71st Regiments, National Guard, State of New York, a regiment of United States Army Regulars, all under command of Colonel H.D. Waller, USA. Stephen H. Weed, Brigadier-General, U.S. Volunteers. From United States Military Register. Born in New York. Appointed from New York as Cadet Military Academy, July 1, 1850. Graduated July 1, 1854. Brevet Second Lieutenant of Artillery, July 1, 1854. Second Lieutenant of the 4th Artillery, December 18, 1854. Served on frontier duty at Fort Brown, Texas, 1855-1856. In Florida, hostilities against Seminole Indians. 1856-1857, promoted to First Lieutenant, 4th Artillery. November 16, 1856. On frontier duty at Fort Leavenworth, quelling Kansas disturbances. 1858-1861. In expedition against Puet and other hostile Indians. May to September, 1860. In skirmishes at Egan Canon, August 11th, and at Deep Creek, September 6, 1860. Captain and Assistant Quartermaster declined. Captain, 5th Artillery, May 14, 1861. In the War of the Rebellion, 1861-1863, as Executive Officer at Regimental Headquarters, Washington, D.C. August 17th to September 2nd, 1861. On recruiting service at New York City, September 2nd to November 11th, 1861. At Camp Grable, near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, November 11th, 1861 to March 8th, 1862. In Virginia Peninsular Campaign, Army of the Potomac, March to August, 1862, being engaged in the siege of Yorktown. April 5th to May 4th, 1862, Battle of Gaines Mill, June 27th, 1862, and Battle of Malvern Hill, June 30th to July 1st, 1862. In the Northern Virginia Campaign, August and September 1862, in the Battle of Manassas. August 30th, 1862, in the Maryland Campaign, Army of the Potomac. September to November 1862, and marched to Falmouth, Virginia, October-November 1862, as Chief of Artillery Corps at Falmouth, Virginia. December 3rd, 1862, to January 23rd, 1863. On leave of absence, January 23rd to April 18th, 1863. In Rappahannock Campaign, Army of the Potomac, April to June 1863, engaged in the Battle of Chancellorsville, May 2nd and 4th, 1863, and in command of Artillery Brigade, 5th Army Corps, May 10th to June 6th, 1863, and in Pennsylvania Campaign, Army of the Potomac, as Brigadier-General United States Volunteers, June 6th, 1863, June-July 1863, being engaged in the Battle of Gettysburg, July 1st and 2nd, 1863, killed July 2nd, 1863, at the Battle of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, aged 30, whilst commanding the 140th and 146th Regiments New York Volunteers, and 91st and 155th Regiments Pennsylvania Volunteers in the capture of Little Round Top. And now I'm going to read a poem titled Grand Army of the Republic. Come, old comrades, step together. What though locks be grey and thinning? Oft we've tramped through wind and weather. Oft we've heard the cannon dinning. Let the drums and fifes sing loudly, thrilling songs that live in story. Old men's shoulders straighten proudly. Old men's eyes are filled with glory. In the siege and in the battle, while the dead fell thick around us, cannon roar and musket rattle, witness to the bond that bound us firmly to each other, with a tie that none shall sever. Brother, heart to heart of brother, in a throb that beats forever, bound us to our country's honor, with a stronger bond and wider, when the darkness rushed upon her, and we rose and stood beside her, heard the distant battles roaring, heard her voice in anguish calling, and from farm and city pouring, stayed her in our arms from falling. With our breasts make bucklers round her, kept her glorious flag above us, then by deathless bonds we bound her, to remember us and love us. Thus we march in step together, year by year, old comrades meeting, as we tramped through wind and weather, when the battle sang a greeting. Not alone we tell the story. All our patriot dead are near us. They have earned the greater glory. Hark! Their soldier voices cheer us. See them march in step together. Though in grave and trench they're lying, still they tramp through wind and weather, guard the land they saved in dying. And with that, we are, I think, officially at the second to last episode of this regimental history. We have one more to go. It's going to be, the last one will probably be a little bit longer, but all we have to cover are rosters for the field and staff, the rank and file, and revised, and I'm not reading that because it's too long. I'm just going to simply post it, because that tells you what happened to each individual person, and it is very long. So you can just read that if you want to find out what happened to each individual person. And then, and the next episode is just going to cover the appendix, and it's the sketches of regiments composing of Humphreys' division in Antietam, Fredericksburg, and the Chancellorsville campaigns, as well as the official reports from that battle, which we will read because they're very interesting. But other than that, we're done. We're almost completely done with this regimental history, and I know I said I was going to take 1 week off, but I think I'm going to take 2. Oh my goodness. Well, that's going to be the end of this episode. They're all very interesting, but I don't want to just sit there and talk about each individual person we come across in all of our episodes. So, especially when they've been covered so many times in this regimental history. All right. I am out of here. Thanks for listening. I will catch you in our final episode next week. That's right. And if you've been listening from the beginning, bless you. Bless you, bless you. All right. Okay. Have a great one, guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Old John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured all to save. But though he sleeps, his life was lost while struggling for the slave. His soul is marching on. hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. John Brown was a hero, undaunted, true, and brave, and Kansas knew his valor when he fought her rights to save. And now, though the grass grows green above his grave, his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. He captured Harper's Ferry with his 19 men so few, and frightened old Virginia till she trembled through and through. They hung him for a traitor, themselves a traitorous crew, but his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. John Brown was John the Baptist, of the Christ we are to see. Christ who of the bondman shall the liberator be. And soon throughout the sunny South the slaves shall all be free, for his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. The conflict that he heralded, he looked from heaven to view on the army of the Union with its flag red, white, and blue. And heaven shall sing with anthems o'er the deed they mean to do, for his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. Soldiers of freedom, then strike while strike ye may, the death blow of oppression in a better time and way. The dawn of old John Brown has brightened into day, and his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. For his soul